What's going on, everybody, and welcome to Challenge Accepted. I'm Thomas, and I'm here with Frank.
Hey, everybody.
And today we are doing a classic staple of cinema, Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark.
This is a classic. And you know what I realized this viewing is it's just called Raiders of the Lost Ark. It doesn't say Indiana Jones in like the title sequence. And so I was like, I kind of like that. I don't know why I never thought about that before. But then when you look of like Quantum Solace, isn't 007 Quantum Solace, it's just Quantum Solace.
Right.
So I wonder if that's how they meant it. I think Indiana Jones, we should expand this universe like we do with 007. That being said, we need to replace the actor. God bless him. He's amazing, but man, he's getting up there.
Yeah, he is. And, you know, now that Indiana Jones 5 just came out, Dial of Destiny, I don't think he's going to be coming back. It seems like he's done now.
I think he's even said that. He's even said like, okay, that was good. You know, I'm good.
Yeah, you're right. You know, I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you replace Harrison Ford. It obviously didn't work on the Solo side of things on Star Wars land, but we also get a lot of ties to Star Wars because of George Lucas and this whole story, which is so great. But before we go, we should also maybe give an update on where we are with the drive.
Yeah, the canned food drive is doing quite well.
What?
I don't have any of the numbers on me right now. Hold on. I pulled them up, but let's do that separately. We'll do that afterwards.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds good.
Because I got to pull them back all up. I forgot all about it.
Sounds good. Yeah, and if you guys are not following us yet, check out CA Podcast live on Twitter. We are checking to see what our threads is going to be. And if you're not on threads, man, you probably should be on it. It is popping off.
It's so much fun. As of right now, 72 million users, and it's like day 2. And
that's crazy.
It is a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I'm loving it. So yeah, whether you're following Geek Freaks or the Joystick Show or other podcasts, yeah, definitely make sure you follow us, and then we'll figure out what we're gonna do for the Challenge Accepted drive. And food drive. Yeah, and threads.
It's all coming together. All right, I'm going to do our rundown for Raiders of the Lost Ark. I got my 2-minute timer here, guys. I got you know what? That's what our first post on Threads will be, is the timer that we use for all this. There we go. See?
Yeah. I got you. Actually, I got my own timer actually going this time.
Oh, you got so fancy over there? Okay.
Well, yeah, I'm like, I want to be able to be like 30 seconds rather than
guessing.
Yes. Okay. On 3, 2, 1.
Boom. All right. We start off in August 1936. Indy is in Peru, and this is just one of the most classic scenes in the entire franchise. We see that he's shifting the bag of sand for that golden idol. He ends up getting it. We get a really cool exchange of him trying to escape, and we see Doc Ock betrays him, and it's really cool. Yeah, he's just
I was thinking Doc Ock the whole time too. Yeah.
But this kind of sets up who this character is. He's an amazing raider of tombs. So then we fast forward. He's in his university, and he's teaching and stuff like that, and he explains like, I almost got it, and he's just basically collecting enough goods to be able to pay for his trips to collect more goods. And this time the guy's like, you know what, actually the U.S. Army wants to talk to you. And he goes and he talks to them. Yeah. And they said, Indy, we want you to go get the Ark of the Covenant before the Nazis. That's the entire premise of the entire movie. And as a good Catholic boy, I was like, oh, I know about that. So I was extra excited about this. Right. Indy meets Marion, who is a love interest from back in the past. And she is dope, and she has one of the coolest intro scenes ever, where she does this drinking contest. But they have a really cool, contentious friendship/relationship that's just fun to watch.
Yeah, Marion the Tank.
Yep. Okay, and then they go through Cairo in Egypt, and they meet other friends there as well, which is kind of one of the best parts about Indy. He's got friends in every corner. They discover the Ark. Oh my God, I'm going so slow. He knows how to do it because he's actually smart and good at this. I know, right? So they finally get it out, but surprise, Nazi surprised you, and they get it from him, and he does multiple badass fights with them. By the end, the Nazis are like, we're going to open it up here. We're going to do the ceremony and open it up. And he's like, don't look. And then she says, okay, I won't. And they don't look. And boom, Nazi face melt, which is, of course, also classic. And there's so many cool clips from this. And then we're done. And then that's it. That's everything. Oh, my God. I was dragging my feet at the beginning of that because that boulder scene's so cool. And I forgot to mention it.
Yeah. I mean, the first part of the movie, you're right. Like when we were going back and reviewing this, because I watched this for fun, preparing for Dial of Destiny.
Yeah.
And then you're like, yeah, we're going to challenge to it. I'm like, damn it. Now I got to go back and take notes. Yeah. And in the beginning, it's so dense. Like before we even leave Peru, just the cave diving and then him gathering the sand on the way in, the spiders being on Alfred Molina's back, the traps. I mean, it's so elaborate. And at one point I paused it because I just wanted to see how far we were in the movie. I'm like, it's only been like 7 minutes and all this shit has already happened. So he does such a good job. And by he, I mean Steven Spielberg, of packing so much in and showing you who Indy is and setting up what this movie is going to be like, the tension of the movie in such a short amount of time. It's really amazing and really well done.
Generally, when we're doing like a quick rundown, we go from like, we kind of explain like the big action scenes. There are so many action scenes in this movie that I really couldn't even do it. Like so you stop for a moment where they're on a ship, like somebody's going to be taking the Ark back and it's going to be fine. All of a sudden Nazis raid it with a submarine. Then he's climbing on the submarine. That is a transitional phase of the movie. It's not even like an action part of the movie, but anywhere else where like the director's like, hey, we need a submarine for our hero to climb on. You're like, okay, this is a big scene. That was just part of it.
The whole movie would probably be based on the submarine after that. It's like not like a one little part. And then you're like, yeah, we built all this submarine props and boat props. And it's like, yeah, that only counts for 10 minutes of the movie. You're like, what?
Not even, it's so fast, dude. So and the entire movie is just basically moving from one action moment to another action moment. It opens with one. And I think that's one of my favorite parts about this movie is it's a high quality late 80s, early 90s film that kind of set the bar for a lot of action movies going forward after this. And if you think of like True Lies or some of these other big priced action movies, this was definitely, at the forefront. It felt like a new attempt at a James Bond. Matter of fact, one of my fun facts later on is this was an answer to James Bond. And so I think that's why I kind of always wanted it to be. I'm a big fan of James Bond as well. So I've always wanted this to be another franchise like that.
Right. And I'm right there with you. I mean, James Bond 007 is like in my blood. That was the movies my dad showed me. Yeah. And then Star Wars. So it's interesting because, maybe this is dating myself, but maybe in a good way. I was born right before The Last Crusade came out.
Okay.
So I was even born when these movies came out. The first Indiana Jones movie I saw was Temple of Doom. Mm-hmm. And then my dad showed me Star Wars and he sat me down. He's like, we were watching Star Wars one day and we watched the original trilogy. And then it was 007. And yeah, I love that fact. Steven Spielberg always wanted his own 007. And then when you look at Temple of Doom, there's a nod to it because he's wearing the tuxedo. But you can see that this is almost an American version of 007, right? He's the international guy. He's going on adventures. He kicks ass, gets the girl, like craziness ensues. All of that stuff is so well done. And Indy was probably, again, I wasn't alive at this time, but probably in the 80s when guys were coming up or kids were coming up, they were like, this is who we want to be. This is the John Dutton. This is the Mission Impossible, Ethan Hawke, all that.
Which is actually probably now definitely our 007, American 007 is Ethan Hawke. But I've 81 this came out. I didn't even think it was that early on because I remember watching it so much as a kid too. So yeah, throughout the 80s, these are coming out. 81, you're talking, George Lucas at his height and Steven Spielberg high up there too. Obviously that's going to be important later on because George Lucas is one of the writers of this film. And yeah, it is so good. I want to make sure to drop, let's see, where was it at right here? I have it right here. Steven Spielberg directed this. It was George Lucas that came to him and said, hey, I want to make a 007 movie next. Or no, Steven Spielberg said, I want to make a 007 movie next. George Lucas is like, I got an idea. Why don't we do one instead is back with the Nazis? And it's this whole adventure, stuff like that, which I think is one of the big benefits compared to a 007, where like the villain is complicated or might be not believable. In all but one 007 or Indiana Jones, it's just Nazis. It's okay. He beats them up. We could all agree that they're bad. And so I do like that they kind of just keep it simple like that. So these two working together, it's always a good idea, Yeah,
absolutely. The whole period piece of it all, I think it was a really awesome setting.
Yeah.
Because now you're tying in real world events with like mysticism. It's something that I think Marvel kind of does well too. It's like, it feels really, for the most part, a real world grounded. And then you throw in the superhero and fantasy of it all. And we get this here, right? Because it starts off, like you were saying, it's just a guy going into a tomb, raiding a tomb, not the Tomb Raider. And he fills up this bag of sand. It's about the idol. There's a double crossing that goes on. And then, the US government comes into his his classroom and says, "Hey, can you teach us about it?" And man, does he start off, not only is he a badass in the beginning, whooping ass, but then he's this really intelligent professor that is the expert, pulls out the big book with the buckles and on the chalkboard. Wow, can't say anything. And just kind of, diagramming it all out. It's just really, really well done. And it sets the scene for, again, what the movie becomes, which is this world hopping adventure.
And they right away let you know, like, he's going to be the suave debonair type. With one of his students even saying "love you" on her eyelashes, so when she blinks, he could see it and stuff. But he's kind of put off by that, which is a very modern take on this character for 81. For there to be a man who's supposed to be your hero, who shows weakness, we see later on when he's sore and he's beaten up. Marion is really the more, I would say, dominant of their relationship, which kind of shows that, like, you don't have to be the dominant one to be a man. Like, he was a very modern take, I think, on a man, which I wonder if that's because of Han Solo at all. Han Solo's the same way with Leia.
Yeah. I would say Han Solo to me feels a little bit more classic male archetype.
True.
You know what I mean? And Indiana Jones has all the classifications, but when it comes to the relationship of it all, she's the one that's like, you left me, you betrayed me. The weird part for me still is I was just a child, because somebody did the math on it and he would have been in his 20s. Yeah, maybe like 25, and she would have been like 15 to 17. So that is a little weird, but
it
maybe
is a little
not
weird,
so weird for that time period.
That's
not for the 30s.
Yeah, because I have grandparents that were like, I got married at 15. I'm like, oh, I wouldn't trust a 15-year-old to babysit. He got married. Right. So, it was definitely a time period thing. It doesn't age well. But yeah, if you compare Marion to Princess Leia, I think that there's some very familiar strokes there. I think Leia is the more extreme version of that. But definitely Marion, like, I love her intro scene when Indy's finally going to go out on his adventure and she's doing that drinking contest. She's almost kind of feigning drunkenness and then outdoes her competitor and they're laid out. I always really liked that scene, and that, like, she clearly runs that bar. Not only is she drinking at it, she runs it. And it's just in the middle of what Nepal, I think she is. It's just such a cool scene.
I know, she's kind of the main draw probably for the bar. It's really, like, pretty American lady in Nepal, who drinks with the customers. Like, it's awesome. It is by far one of the strongest scenes for a character to get introed in. And it really sets the bar. Like, she can hang with the best of them. Yeah. And then Indy comes in and I love how they just silhouette him at first, right? Like, even when we first get him in the beginning movie, it's just the back silhouette, and then he turns around with the whip. And when we get to Nepal, she's there. We see her directly on in the camera, and then behind there is this shadow, and it's just Indy's shadow, and she walks forward. The way he shoots things and the way Steven Spielberg gives the perspective and the shots, I think it's amazing. It is by far one of the most perfect shot and then edited movies I think ever.
The editing is top notch in this movie. Again, like, they did not waste a single moment. It is fast. Even like the slower moments. Let's like kind of jumping in. Well, actually, right here in this moment, when the two are talking, you're getting so much information without it being just a lore dump about, like, the age difference, sure, but also kind of their relationship, how they're almost rivals to each other. And you get a strong feeling that, like, she's the only person who really, like, can hold a candle to Indy's personality as well, and he loves that. And it's just so cool. And then, I mean, while they're conversating, here comes Nazis. Like, it's just amazing that just, like, out of nowhere, the next group comes in and they burn the bar down, and it escalates so fast. Two of, I think, cinema's greatest villains are in this movie. You truly have disdain for them. One of them that is an Indy but opposite. He's Shadow Sonic, who's just Indy but a jerk. And then another one who's just like, hi. Yeah, then you have the, like, Nazi doctor guy that's like, yeah, I'm a Nazi and I'm more evil than that. It's like, okay, what? It's so great. So they're good bad guys.
Absolutely. Yeah. That scene is awesome. He gets, the medallion or the top of the staff burned into his hand. Yeah. And it really does set the archetypes perfect in it. Balak in the beginning, and then and then the Nazi scientist totes. Zola, right? Yeah, pretty much Armin Zola. Yeah. But from there we get to Cairo, and we're like, again, we're globe trotting all over the place. We meet Salah, who's like the man, just super cool. He's like Indy's connect in Cairo, and the dude is connected. I mean, he's like, he has even the little birds with all the kids being stoked and, you know, hanging out.
That's a
and
trait
treating them well.
we see move forward. A really great example of this is John Wick. When John Wick meets, oh God, Lawrence Fishburne. I can't remember his name in the movie, but he meets Lawrence Fishburne, who's connected to this whole like
the underground, the
streets underground. Yeah. And then he has, again, birds as well. But it's kind of like this thing where like John Wick through his adventures has built these relationships. And because he kind of always is a stand-up guy, those relationships supersede the adventure that he's on now, and he could go back to them. We're right away, we find that out about Indy. Through his conversation or just meeting with Salah, a character you don't think he would normally know, you're like, oh, Indy's got people all over the world then, you know, and it's just like, oh, I can't wait to meet them all. And that's why I think like that's one of the things I think would really benefit from this movie expanding this world expand. We had Young Indy, by the way, is a really good show from the 90s, where we could just see him like end up in Tibet or Japan and just like know some random person there. And it's like, oh yeah, remember that one night, you know, some drinking party or something. It'd be fun.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool. I haven't watched Young Indy, but I hope it's him like making connections in these different places. So it's like he makes the connection, they go on an adventure, and you know, you get to see that relationship built. Even a young Salah story with him when they first met would probably be so cool.
Yeah, it's a lot of like why is Indy a stand-up adventurer is because of Young Indy. Like that series is a lot of kind of explaining that it's not about the riches to him, it's about exploring the coolness of everything. And so it's a neat old series.
What Fame and Fortune, right? Is that what he says?
That sounds right. Yeah, I don't remember 100%, but yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, Fame and Fortune, Fame and Fortune. So yeah, all of that is super great. We get the awesome action sequence through Cairo, and this is where Marion gets taken away. Or at that time, Indy thinks that she gets exploded, but you know, and he's kind of heartbroken about it.
Drinking
and then they
the
go to this. What's that?
He's drinking with the monkey, which is one of my favorite. Like he's just like bummed out, and it's like a monkey's just chilling with them later on, and it's not like the monkey leaves. He like continues to hang out with the monkey until eventually it's eating dates. And it's just
right. Yeah, meets its final date. Yeah. But that the monkey of it all was hilarious too, because at one point he does like the Heil Hitler, and like just seeing a monkey do it is so ridiculous.
Yeah, I was like, oh no, this is the terrible world that we live in.
Yeah. All of that is awesome. I mean, it's really cool how the story keeps progressing, right? We get the top of the staff. This guru tells him, or like reads the incantation on the on the staff, which is, hey, it's 5 feet tall or 6 feet tall minus the one, which the Nazis don't catch, but Indy does. And so they go in there to like try to find that place where the light will shine down to find the location of the Ark.
Not to get too political, but I think that's a real commentary on colonialism versus like trying to be a part or appreciate the culture that you're in. Because I think the Nazis are coming in like, we're going to strong arm our way through this. We're superior to you. When Indy's like, I'm going to learn from the people who already live here. And that's where he learns that one more detail that's important. And I think that's kind of the whole point of Indy in general is like every time you see them do something crazy, you're barging into something you shouldn't know about. And he's just trying to explore. So I think I think it's pinnacle here. I want to give another shout out to, of course, my favorite video game of all time is World of Warcraft. There are an immense amount of callouts to Indiana Jones, specifically this one in World of Warcraft. And one of the dungeons you do in WoW, you have to find 2 pieces of staff and a top. You put them together, you place them over here, and it shines on a spot on the thing, and the boss comes out. So like literally, awesome. This scene is and then there's a character they call Jones Harrison in World of Warcraft that you help a lot. He's part of the Explorers League, so it's just good fun.
Yeah, that's killer. There's probably people who didn't even know kids who were growing up who had no idea that was from Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
And, they're like, that's such a cool idea. Well, this is where it came from.
This is where it's at. Yeah.
Yeah. I like also there's this theme of light, right? And we're seeing in the beginning, he's like, stay out of the light in the tomb. Now he's at this point with the staff and he needs the light to shine down in the correct location.
Great catch.
And as soon as it hits that place where the Ark is, it lights up, right? And you can see on Indy's face, he's like, oh man, this is crazy. In the beginning, when he first gets asked to go on this mission, he's like, I don't believe in any of this I'm trying to think of what the exact wording he uses is.
He uses it a
like-
lot in The Last Crusade. He does that whole thing with his dad because his dad's fully on board with everything in here, and he's like, I don't believe in it. You know, even when they're asking like, well, what's in the ark? What are these lines? And he's like, lightning, fire, God's holy wrath. Like it could be
I don't know,
anything.
some other
right?
hocus pocus. Yeah, he
Right.
brushes it off like whatever.
And which makes the final scene, not to go ahead of us too far, but makes the final scene when he's telling her, well, almost final scene, and he's like, you see the look on his face, kind of like realizing like this shit's real. You know, you see him slowly. He almost he doesn't want to tell Marion right away, close your eyes, but then he's like, you see the realization come to him like this is real. Then he tells Marion, close your eyes. I know this is from the scriptures and stuff like that, and then does it, and it's just like, oh, that's cool. You know, he's actually leaning on the stuff he learned from his dad.
Absolutely. I mean, that is another element to what makes this movie so great, right? I mean, grounded in realism, again, it starts in this place of, you know, it's just a guy who's globetrotting around the world and trying to get things from history. But then you start adding the maybe fantasy or religious aspects to these artifacts, and it really does start shaping the way things turn out. And Indy is like, I better believe this, otherwise we're dead. And that's cool. Like, it's just a cool thought. I just love how it sets the basis for this character and the growth of the character.
All of Indy's world is interesting in that way, where it's not necessarily that he is a religious person, but he knows that there are facts written down somewhere, and whether or not this means one thing or the other, they come from this. So I like the idea of like, whether or not he believes in God doesn't matter. He just knows that in a book they said that there are dangerous things that come out of that box. Close your eyes. Or, you know, these people say that you have to use a light to do this. I don't know what kind of light that is, but okay, sure, shine the light. So I like that he's like, you know, it's a good mix so that anybody could watch this and take enjoyment out of it without anybody being offended, which nowadays I don't know if that could be done. You know?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day too, like, it's still cool to hate Nazis. So like, that's always a
we
win.
still have a bad guy we could just, you know, go ahead and get hit by a plane propeller and be like, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. I know. Looking back on that scene specifically, I was like, man, that's pretty violent.
Yes.
You know, and I'm like, I wonder if that would count for a PG rating now. Like, that is a lot of blood.
There's a lot of blood. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a cool.
Yeah.
By the way, that is also a question in World of Warcraft. Is that part too? Is the whole plane
Really?
scene? Yeah, they love it.
All right. Well, I'm starting to feel like World of Warcraft wasn't as creative as I thought it was. But
there's so many like Game of Thrones references too, not based off the show, but off the books because it came out in 2004. And it's just like, oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah, these are dire wolves, sure. You know. Yeah.
Right on. Yeah, the Marion of it all. I hate to jump back to that, but she is this perfect example of, you know, a regular person. You know, she gets trapped in the plane.
Yes.
She's trying to be useful, but she gets captured. Indy tries to save her. He leaves her there, like, I'll come back for you, which is an awesome kind of Harrison Ford thing, because Han Solo kind of does the same thing after, you know, before getting turned into carbonite. But I love this actress. I think she was a perfect choice for the character.
Karen Allen, yeah, she did an excellent job. And then her conversations with Belloc in the tent, she was holding her own and likely was going to just get out of there just fine without Indy. So it was kind of like, yeah, you know what? She could survive on her own. If we got some sort of this, by the way, a little stipulation, I haven't seen the latest Indiana Jones, Crazy Week. I will be soon, but I really hope that she comes back into the franchise somewhere. She's really cool. I mean, I know, like, come back more, basically, in the franchise. I'll say that. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, such an awesome and perfect casting, I feel like, for her. But eventually she gets thrown into the tomb where all the snakes are in. And of course, you know, we get the perfect setup in the beginning of the movie where the snake's in the cockpit and Indy goes, I hate snakes.
Yes.
You know, and yeah, boom. Now he's thrown back into a complete pit filled with nothing but snakes. And yeah, it's just a creepy scene. Like, they do such a good job of making you get the ick with what's placed in the movie, right? Like, whether it's the bugs all over Alfred Molina's back, or then the snakes with Indy. It's just like these really crazy and like uncomfortable situations.
Yeah, we get the famous line from him, you know, why did it have to be snakes? I'll make sure to put it here. But I do like how you were mentioning light before. We see it here as well, where there's snakes on the ground. They're using torches to kind of make a small path that begin to fail eventually. The room they're in, like, if you take a moment, this time I've seen this movie so many times, but this time I was really paying attention to it. The beautiful statues that are all around him. Like, there's so many cool things about this room, but you're focused on the snakes. And
Yeah.
when the like Nazis are greeting basically Indy from the top, the way that like light shaft comes through, it's
Mhm.
very well lit. I mean, this is just Steven Spielberg being Steven Spielberg in this movie, really.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I can't take credit for this. Mark Bernardin, you know, he does Fat Man Beyond. He's a writer in Hollywood, all that stuff, comic book writer. He was saying, yeah, he's like, Steven Spielberg's never created a bad shot. He's like, and this is
Yeah.
just him at his best. Like every scene is action packed and it puts some piece of information in there, whether it's like these quick cuts, you know, whether, you know, you see the whip going up, you see it snap down, you see the gun fall. I mean, all of this happens in a matter of 6 seconds, but you
Yes.
get so much of what happened. And I'm like,
Right.
what? And I was thinking when I was watching, I'm like, why don't they do that more now? You know, there's things like are not filled in because I don't know. They're trying to make a longer shot or just kind of give us something, but you miss out on all the details. And I love how it shows us the details in this movie.
You know, you called it out so well in that there's a scene after this, he's escaping, and we see him climbing on a truck. We see in front of them is the car full of bad guys, and so modern day you'd think, oh, they're gonna bring out a gun or they're gonna do something to, but no, they're just kind of telling the car. But immediately, Andy's climbing underneath the car. There's a part where he just shoves the whip up. We don't see him tie the whip off or anything like that, but we know, okay, whip's
I think
attached somehow.
We hear the sound though. We hear the whoosh.
Okay. But that's all you need, right? And then
Right.
he slips out of the back, he drags by the whip quickly. And again, if you were to think of modern movies, you'd think, okay, him sliding out of the back, hanging on with a whip, we're gonna have an extended thing where something's gonna like, oh, you have to dodge this. No, climb up the whip, let's get into this truck. It's so fast. And
Yes.
it's awesome because of it. And the sound design, let's talk about sound real quick. I just want to give a quick shout out. John Williams.
Absolutely.
Amazing John Williams made this heroic music. Every time you hear it, I don't know about you, but whenever time I hear that sting, I'm like thinking of swinging right off the bat and just
Yeah.
like swinging on the whip or some cool adventure through this forest or jungle.
Jumping over spikes or
It just right away makes me want to be an adventurer, you know? And it's just, it's amazing. John Williams has this way, like with Harry Potter, and he's like, I want to create wonder and mystery and childhood, you know? And it's like, okay, sure, here's a Harry Potter theme. And he's just really good at that. So this one is one of his best.
Absolutely. You're totally right. That sound, you know, I don't remember the movies as much as I remember going to Disneyland growing up. But when
Yes.
I got on that ride and you hear that dun 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 dun, you
Absolutely.
just, oh my God, it was just so exciting. And then, yeah, you're basically brought into the Raiders of the Lost Ark. And yeah, it gives you this feeling of, I want to be a hero. I want to go on adventures.
If you guys have, I mean, I can't say like, oh, you should go to Disneyland just for this. You should go to Disneyland for many
You
reasons.
should go to Disneyland just for
Yes.
this. I'll say it.
And the
Although it's
Indiana
expensive as
Jones
hell
ride
right now.
is incredible. The wait for the Indiana Jones ride is incredible, where you're going through like this whole tunnel and then you get into that one room with the projector. It is awesome. And do single rider. You don't need to be sitting next to your friends. Single rider, you cut down that time at least 2/3. It's great.
Yeah, I second you on that. Yeah, single rider's the way to go. Yeah, on that ride. But so awesome. The music, fantastic score, and then the sound.
Yeah.
So again, we talked about the whip cracking, but we also get a familiar engine start towards the beginning on Jock's plane, which totally sounds, I don't know if it's the Millennium Falcon or if it's an X-Wing or something like that, but there's that engine start that's
Yeah.
so Star Wars from it. I love that little tidbit. And then we get the Wilhelm scream, and done so great. I think at least 3 times in this movie, which is that classic scream of the guy, you know, I don't know what decibels it hits, but it hurts your ears almost. And it's so iconic in these classic movies. Well done. Well done.
We
all
may
around
have
the
to
board.
we might have to incorporate some classic top 5s into Challenge Accepted, because I would like to do maybe something along the lines of top 5 John Williams, top 5 Wilhelm screams. Like that would be fun.
That'd
And
be fun.
there are a ton of Star Wars references, of course, the Wilhelm screams in every Star Wars as well. The other thing I wanted to mention too, sound design wise, there are many punches. That's kind of Indy's really go-to is punching things. For all those punches, it was a pile of leather jackets and a baseball bat. That's how they got the punch sound. So they would just like whack the pile of jackets, leather jackets,
Really?
to make that sound. Toof, toof, toof. Yeah.
Wow. I love it. I kind of miss that from modern movies, that iconic punch sound. Because we
Yeah.
had it, you know, in the 80s. Well, you know, I obviously haven't watched a lot because I wasn't alive. But in the early 90s, we had that too. Like there, you know, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Last Action Hero, all that stuff. When he punched somebody, it
classic,
had this sound. And the sound was just awesome. Rocky definitely has these awesome punching noises. And yeah, it's just iconic. I love it. I just wish we had that in modern movies now.
Yeah.
Leather
Foley
jacket sounds
artist
like the
would
way
be
to go.
so fun, dude. I think Foley artist has got to be one of the funnest jobs. Like,
Right.
like when you hear him, a gun cocking is actually just opening a door knob and stuff like that. It's just got to be fun.
Yeah, exactly. Or like people walking through a forest and they dump a pile of rocks and they just stomp on it.
Yeah.
You know, like it all looks super fun. I want to do that as well.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. So we have basically then eventually we get onto the boat, and we have a really nice kind of love scene between Marion and Indy, where he's saying like, "Oh, I'm hurt here, I'm hurt there," and they're about to kiss, and it's kind of this playfulness that's good to see in this relationship, because these two have been through hell and back, and we see that they're constantly kind of bickering, but also find each other enjoyable, and this is finally a moment where they just straight up are being cute and loving each other. That's nice to see.
Yeah, the bond is solidified. You're like, okay, they're picking right back up where they left off.
Yes.
That's the moment we all want. And then I like it. She puts on the nightgown and comes back around the mirror.
Yeah.
That two-sided flipping mirror that everybody,
Some
like every
little Looney
cartoon you've
Tunes.
ever seen. Yeah, exactly. And whacks with head, and that scream too. Again, not to go back to sound design, but it's so hilarious.
Yeah.
And it just like, it's just a great tension break from it being too sappy, too serious, and then this ridiculous thing happens.
Even
And he
that
gets whacked
scream,
with
they
the
do the
mirror.
wide shot on the boat, like it's like one of those like, oh, you heard it from all the way over here kind of thing.
Yeah.
It was funny.
Oops, sorry.
It's okay.
Watch is going off now. But you're totally right. Yeah, so good. So good. We then see the submarine pop up, and I guess Indy stowaways for like a split second to then go to the Nazi base, you know, to, I guess, track down the Ark, because at this point it gets taken back.
Yeah.
And he steals the Nazi uniform and then eventually meets back up with Belloc and the rest of the Nazis with the Ark on a ridge holding a rocket launcher. Now, this thing for me is, I love it because it's so badass, but it's also like, that's kind of ridiculous. Not only can he blow up, you know, the Ark, this coveted piece, but also like he could kill Marion and, you know, all this stuff.
In her
It's kind
defense,
of
her first
ridiculous.
reaction was just run. I think the reason
Yeah.
she's doing that is like, let it rip, Indy, tear it up. But
Right.
Belloc knows better. And I love Belloc's lines here. I'm going to put them right here. Where he's basically explaining like, I know Indy, and he treasures treasure more than anything else. He knows the
Yeah.
value of this relic and doesn't want to see it destroyed. And it's like, man, he's willing to basically be captured by Nazis for that to happen. That's so cool.
So, based on what we know, do you think it would have been better to have Belloc come back in another episode if he wasn't killed off in this one?
I really love Belloc's character. I think we see, speaking of James Bond, 006 or whatever is the one that betrays them. And he's like my favorite 007 villain too. Like I always like
Right.
the one that's on the inside that sees like, that's like, oh, we could go further.
Yeah. Like the counter. It's like, you know,
Yeah.
like Deathstroke to Batman, or I guess Joker to the Batman. Like, you know, like they kind of want the same things, but like in different ways. And yeah, just like anytime you
Red's-
have a villain who's like the opposite side of the same coin, I do love that as well.
Right. Like when Red Hood, before Red Hood became a good guy, was a very good bad guy because he was
Yeah.
Robin. Like he knew Batman's tricks. He was watching him from the rooftops the whole time. And you're like, wait, who knows how to watch Batman from the rooftops? You know, that's what we're getting here. It's
Right.
like, he knows more.
Yeah, definitely. It was something I was thinking about this time around where I was like, man, it would have been cool if, you know, Belloc didn't die, but you get to see how serious the power is, right? He gets captured, they get tied up, and they do the seance to open up the Ark to let,
Yes.
you know, God's light out. And these ghosts and all these, I don't know, entities come and just melt their faces. What
Yeah.
a scene. You know, I can imagine being back in 81. This probably terrified people. It blew their mind.
Yes.
This was probably cutting edge special effects. What do you think about that scene? Or what did you think about it when the first time you watched it? And what do you think about it now?
When I first watched it, I was like, oh my God, this is gruesome. Watching it now, I respect it as an era of cinema.
Right.
Because the face melting, like they use it in Star Trek and Next Generation a few times too. It's, man, they don't do it anymore. We use CGI for that, but it's like, looks like a
Right.
wax melting face. By
Yeah,
the way,
yeah.
just another fun fact here, to get the ghostly images, they're mannequins that they would submerge in water and then film with a fuzzy camera. So that's how they got the ghost images that you see. They're all mannequins from underwater. But,
That's crazy. Even back then, the special effects, I mean, not even back then, but it's like even the special effects were practical, which
Yeah.
is cool. And then they probably just layered that footage on top of the other thing.
Exactly.
That's really sick. I mean, so
get
creative for the time. Yeah, and I think that's the thing for me now. Like, I watched this, you know, the movie I grew up with was like Star Wars. That's the one my dad was like, you got to watch this. Indiana Jones wasn't that, but I always had respect for it because I knew how cutting edge it was at the time. I knew it was a Steven Spielberg movie, and just how creative he was to make these special effects happen is so impressive. Like, you can't help but think like that was ahead of its time for
Yeah.
the time.
I mean, Steven Spielberg was a pioneer in cinema. Going into Jaws, which is one of my favorite movies of all time, he invented the camera that can film in the water like that. So it's
Right.
like he wanted the shot, and we see what Christopher Nolan does it now. Matter, I just sent you something from Christopher Nolan. Actually, reminds me of that. But
All right.
Nolan is the kind of guy that's like, I want this shot. Let's invent the technology behind it. James Cameron famously does
James Cameron.
this.
Yeah, that's
So
the other reference
it's-
I was gonna say.
Those are the directors that go down, you know, in history. Not necessarily. I appreciate that extra effort. That's really cool.
Yeah, it was. And it makes the scene. I can imagine at that time, you know, you go to see in theaters, and that was probably scary AF. Like, people are getting chopped
Yes.
up by propellers, a room full of snakes, you know, a tomb full of all these traps, and then ghosts coming out of this coffin thing and melting faces. That's just, yeah, it was crazy. So I don't know if this movie isn't as good without it. And it's about the
Right.
first time we start seeing that Indy believes in the lore. Like, he's come full circle, right? It's not just about fame and fortune. He does get the arc at the end, but
Yeah.
it's also like there's something to these old texts about this magic or power, and he believes it. And luckily he does,
Yes.
because it saves his life.
It's a very Constantine relationship he has there and on out. It's like, I know they exist. I respect that they exist, and I'll keep it at that distance. You know, it's
Yeah.
not like he embraces one side or the other. He's just like, okay, I get it. And I think that's why Crystal Skulls bombed so horribly. Is like even Temple of Doom. I know you're a big fan of Temple of Doom. I appreciate it a lot, but it's definitely third of the three originals to me.
Oh.
And Crystal Skull abandoned completely everything that these movies had to do with everything. It was all time traveling stuff. So
Right.
like-
Yeah, I mean, Temple of Doom for me is probably number one because it's the one I watched the most.
right,
But
that's
I've recently, I haven't watched Crystal Skulls, but I'm gonna give a shout out to this podcast called Underrated, and they look at underrated movies and then
Mhm.
watch them and review them. And they just did one on Crystal Skulls, and what they were saying about it makes me almost feel, and this is just hearsay based on what I've read about the Dial of Destiny, but it sounds like Crystal Skulls may have been a more appropriate ending than Dial of Destiny. I don't know yet. I mean, in Dial of Destiny, yeah, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not saying go watch it. I definitely want to, but they were making a lot of great cases for the Crystal Skulls, and I have to go back and watch it myself. But it, you know, it still was Steven Spielberg, so I think that there are things in there. That
yeah.
are
Well,
still
and
valid.
it was very clear even when it was filming was like, this is all about making Shia LaBeouf the new Indiana Jones. Like it like,
Right.
and so I think that was one thing that is like, okay, we probably should have stuck the landing on that then. Whether or not it'd be Shia LaBeouf, I think we should have picked our next Indy through a movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's going to be something that's going to be hard to do with Han Solo as well. I mean, Harrison Ford is just this iconic actor. The way he delivers lines, especially in this movie,
Mhm.
to Han Solo, the way he does action, his
Yeah.
demeanor. I mean, the guy was, for me, you know, at the time, probably a more modern John Wayne. And
Yeah.
here he
That's
is.
a really good way to put him. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he just had all of that manliness for the time period.
Oh,
And
yeah.
he's going to be so hard to recast. I mean, we saw it with Solo. It didn't work. And I think that guy's a fantastic actor too. But is he Harrison Ford? To me, no.
Yeah, it's hard to find. I think Chris Hemsworth is kind of filling in as like you could put him in any action movie and he's doing good. But like,
True.
yeah,
That's
if
a
you
good
think
one.
of also like Air Force One, Fugitive, he's just an action star, and we don't have a whole lot of those all the way through. I would say Chris Hemsworth is my first pick. Tom Hardy's always kind of my second go. Yeah, we
Yeah.
could use a new Harrison Ford.
Right. I mean, I think The Rock was trying to get there, but he doesn't, to me, I love The
doesn't-
Rock.
Yeah,
He doesn't have the acting chops that
he
Harrison
doesn't,
Ford does.
exactly.
And you know who I think does is John Cena, but he hasn't been given the Rock platform yet. Because in Peacemaker,
Good
he
call.
was badass.
He was awesome. And speaking of wrestlers, Dave Batista has blown me away.
Batista.
That man needs more jobs. I can't. Who would have? You would have. When he was a wrestler, I would never have thought like that guy's going to be an outstanding actor someday. I would never have
Right.
thought that.
Yeah. So you're right. We don't have the action stars maybe today, but that's why it's going to be so hard. You know, again, Dial of Destiny's out. I'm wondering if this leaves the door open for a new generation of indie to come in. Does it close the door? And are we as an audience going to be capable of accepting a new person? You know, do they recast it?
I think the feel will be scratched by changing franchise probably. So I think Tomb Raider. We had this newer Tomb Raider that I think was actually its best Tomb Raider, and a lot of people don't agree with me on that, but I think it's perfect.
I kind of one of them. I love me some Angelina Jolie.
She's
Lara Croft.
great. But the way that last Tomb Raider felt and like felt more grounded, and the way it ended like felt like an Indiana Jones, where it was like, hey, it's a real thing with a disease that broke out, but everybody thought it was a curse. Like it felt like really cool. But we're getting a whole new one. That doesn't matter. That's got scratched. Phoebe Waller-Bridge, who's in the new Indiana Jones, is in charge of all new Tomb Raider stuff now. So it's going to feel the same. And then I think Uncharted, which is also a video game, is inspired by Indiana Jones. So is Pitfall, by the way. And I think we could just let that happen. I think if we make Uncharted its own franchise, we have one with Tom Holland, but let's keep going with that, is another good option.
Yeah. Uncharted was something. I'm not saying if it was something good or something
Right.
bad, but it was something. I want them to find the right casting and refresh the series if Harrison Ford is truly done, to find that right actor to take over, because I think other generations, we're always going to have these movies. They're always going to be classics, but I do want, you know, generations forward to enjoy Indiana Jones. And I think that's why Indiana Jones is in a way an interesting comparison to Star Wars, right?
Yeah.
Like Star Wars around the same time, George Lucas, both, you know, whether it's Han Solo or Indiana Jones, amazing characters, but Star Wars has found ways to keep it refreshing, keep it interesting, keep it relevant, keep it in the zeitgeist. I want, you know, again, future generations to have that ability with Indiana Jones as well.
Yeah, I wonder what it is about Indy that separates it from the other ones that I wonder if it's got to be the time period thing. That's really cool.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, both, whether it's a galaxy far away or, you know, a time period piece, I think both really work. But the difference for me with Indiana Jones as opposed to Star Wars is Star Wars has found other characters it can latch onto.
Yes.
Where Indiana Jones is so tied to Harrison Ford. Like, this movie does not work without Harrison Ford.
No.
It is not the same movie. You know, it just like, I forgot what the actor's name was. If you don't have Michael J. Fox as Marty McFly, you don't have Back to the Future. You know, if it was whatever that other actor was.
I know they filmed a lot of the movie with him. I can't remember his
With
name
it,
either.
right. I know. But you know what I'm saying? So that's the other thing. You know, hopefully he can bring somebody on. I think it was a good move for Crystal Skulls to try to bring Shia in. I just don't think that movie landed super well with people.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if people liked Shia as much as Harrison Ford.
It's hard because The Last Crusader is actually a perfect. It's probably better than this one, even realistically. It's really well done. And so when you're like, oh, okay, boom, what a great finish to a trilogy, and you're like, well, we're gonna do one more, and it came at a bad time when everybody felt like they were doing the reboots, and we're still in that phase. But it was unfortunate timing for it, I think. But what was the name of that podcast so we could send people that way again to check that out, because that's a really cool idea.
It's the Underrated Podcast, and I think it's Undercast Co on Instagram. But yeah, we'll link it in the show notes.
Okay, perfect. Undercast Co. Okay. Anything else before we get into fun facts?
No, I mean, I think most of this has been a fun facts. You know, we've kind of scattered them throughout it, but we've gushed over it enough. You know, I don't even want to entertain the question, could this work for a modern audience? I think it could. Again, it all comes down to getting the right casting for Indiana Jones for me.
That's the part that it's all linchpin on. All right, let's go ahead and get into our fun facts. All right, let's go ahead and get into our fun facts. We're going to start with the obvious one that everybody knows. So the famous scene in which Indy fights the guy with the sword who's doing all the cool moves was not originally in the script. Harrison Ford proposed, like, this isn't really how he would do this. He would just shoot the guy. And so he did it almost playfully. And that's the one that they stuck with and went with that. So that's one of those things where it's like when you're watching Lord of the Rings and, you know, Aragorn hits the helmet and you're like, oh yeah, he broke his toe right there. It's a fun fact you always tell your friend when you're watching the movie.
Oh yeah.
It's classic.
It is, and it's so iconic because the way it slows down and it's that 1-on-1. You're like, there's gonna be an epic fight, and then boom comes out. Psh, it's so good. Yeah,
I'll find the test footage for it. I'll post it up on our Twitter and our new threads. You could actually see the original footage of him actually fighting it out with the whip, and yeah, it's in the deleted scene. So I'll post that so you guys can see that on our feeds.
Yeah. Speaking of the whip, I want to say this: the whip is so cool. Such a cool like weapon, but also a tool. I think it's one of the best things they did with the new Captain America. Like the shield not only is like a shield, it defends you, but the way he's able to use it and then like slide on it or fall on it or save people with it is so well done. Indy, same thing. Like it's not only a weapon, but he freaking swings on it, uses it to get through the truck, as you were saying. Like the whip is so badass.
And it's just so iconic. Indy. That and the hat too. Like the guy that made, I can't remember his name, but he's the one that's in charge of all of Atari, but the one that went with the Pitfall game based off this. When he was programming the game, he went out and bought a whip and wore the hat and walked around the office with them all the time to kind of get in the same mood as him when he made Pitfall. So it was like,
God, that's so cheesy.
It's so cheesy, but
no,
the story of Atari is amazing. Please, guys, look it up. It is really cool. Okay, so Indy's line on the ship when he's talking to Marion is not the years, honey, it's the mileage, which is a classic line. It was actually ad-libbed by Harrison Ford. It was not in the script at all. He made that up.
Nice.
Yeah. If you freeze frame during the Well of Souls scene, you'll notice a golden pillar with a tiny engraving of R2-D2 and C-3PO on there from, obviously, Star Wars.
Yeah, and I believe the plane in the beginning, the tail number was OW and then 3PO. So, like Obi-Wan and then C-3PO. So, really cool. I love the Star Wars Easter eggs. It's like...
There's there's just the love between these two. Like in the prequel series, if you pay attention really carefully, in the Senate, one of the senators there is E.T. from Spielberg. You know, yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Can you imagine being in the friend group with Steven Spielberg and George Lucas?
Which makes sense because in E.T. when it's Halloween and he sees somebody dressed as Yoda and he's like, oh, like a friend. And it's like, oh, they know each other.
Yeah. I know. It's crazy. Like these movies and stuff almost exist in all the other universes, I guess, except Star Wars. But I guess E.T.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a connection between E.T. and Star, which is crazy to me already. That's already blowing my mind. I got to back out of this.
It's the multiverse before the MCU came around. All right, this is a bit of a long one, but it's just something that I just always have loved. Traditionally, when a new film is released, George Lucas goes on vacation to get away from all the hoopla. As Star Wars Episode 4: A New Hope released in 1977, it was just about to open. He went on vacation to Hawaii and was joined by his friend Steven Spielberg. When the numbers came in and Lucas found out that the film was going to be a success, he started to finally relax and discuss the other topics with his friend. It was at this point that Steven Spielberg confessed he always wanted to direct a James Bond movie. And Lucas said, I got a much better idea for a movie called Raiders of the Lost Ark. The two ended up having a conversation over making a sandcastle together, developing the movie. When they got back home, they met up with Lawrence Kasdan to write the script. So,
wow.
I mean, history.
So many elements of that are crazy, right? One, they're on vacation. Two, like he needed to relax to be able to even share this story. Yeah. Three, like they're building sandcastles. These grown men who are in charge of like $1 million movies. Like we should do Raiders of the Lost Ark. Like watch out. I'm gonna put the moat there.
Yeah. I like to think that they're like building a little Tatooine town or something like that. Like they have plans.
I know. That's funny. Oh, I was going to make the joke. I was like, that's how this podcast started, with me and Frank over sandcastles.
During the filming in Tunisia, which, by the way, speaking of Tatooine, is in Tunisia. That's where they film all of Tatooine as well. But during the filming of Raiders of the Lost Ark in Tunisia, everybody on the crew and the cast got sick except for Steven Spielberg. It is believed the reason he didn't get sick is because he only ate food that he brought with him, cans of SpaghettiOs.
What?
Yes.
Wow. That's hilarious. Being a child saved his life.
Yeah. All right, last one. There's so many, by the way, guys. Please check out IMDb. The trivia section is fantastic. But here's the last one. In 1999, Raiders of the Lost Ark was added to the National Film Registry by the United States Library of Congress. It is the only Indiana Jones film to have been included. Films chosen for being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. which I really like the fact that we've added that in there because I do think it represents America quite well. But also, I like how it's being added to a registry, kind of like it is in the final scene of Raiders of the Lost Ark when they put the Ark in a case with multiple others, and it's like, oh, it's just a legend that's in there with all these other ones, you know?
Yeah, that's true. Wow, you're right. Full circle. That's kind of amazing. Yeah, it's cool. I think it hits all those boxes too, right? Like culturally, cinematography, storytelling. I mean, all of that is so true. You know, how many superheroes or heroes that we have that are based off Indiana Jones? How many movies and action sequence are filmed the way they are because of this movie? Like it totally makes sense, and it's well deserved.
You see its bones in a lot of things. I think Pirates of the Caribbean was one of them. When they were doing the kind of the fights on the cars, I was like, there's a lot of Pirates of the Caribbean here where it's like not quite R-rated action, but also you get what's going on. They did a really good job with that.
Yeah. I could see inspiration from John Wick as well.
Yes.
Well, you know, John Wick is a world traveling guy. You don't know a lot about his past. You learn more about him as he interacts with people from his past.
Yeah.
You know, badass action. Like it's in a way very similar, you know, story wise. And yeah, it works. I mean, it still really works. They need to just, again, I want, you know, if Dial of Destiny again is down 5 years from now, 10 years from now, I want them to revamp it with somebody who can, you know, embody who Harrison Ford is, not be Harrison Ford, but embody all the things that made him great. And then here we are, a new Indiana Jones for the next generation.
All right, guys, I heard the call. I'll do it. Fine, Harrison.
There you go. Yeah.
I want to give a quick shout out to somebody on Threads. There you go. Who I put out there. Does anybody want to talk about Indy? They brought up, this is Friends Talking Nerdy Podcast. Check them out, guys. They said, you have to bring up how Tom Selleck almost had the role. That's interesting. Tom Selleck was really big at this time. Magnum PI, Hawaii Five-0. Right, I think he did both those. I want to also give a quick, this reminds me of another fun fact. Everybody loves Rescue Rangers. And we have Chip and Dale. One is based off of Tom Selleck from Hawaii Five-0. The other one is based off Indiana Jones. So there you go.
Wow. Yeah. I wonder if they knew that Tom Selleck was supposed to be Indiana Jones, and they're like, let's do Tom Selleck's most iconic character. Let's do Harrison Ford's most iconic. Although I guess Han Solo too, but yeah. And then they're like, these are the chipmunks.
Yeah,
you know,
that's so good.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah. Do you want to get into some reviews for this movie?
Oh man, yeah. I mean, how do you even review something so magnificent? I'll just throw something together. Here we go. Raiders of the Lost Ark is a period piece. Nope. Scratch that. Raiders of the Lost Ark is fantastic. Fast-paced, action-packed. It is 80s cinema at its best. And one of Steven Spielberg's best work. Oof. Well, that was bad.
Yeah. No, you know, I mean, all of what you said is damn true about it.
Yeah, nothing.
Yeah, I would probably, and I'm going to do probably even worse here. It is, a staple of cinema. It created action, adventure. It created a new hero archetype that people would copy for generations. Every scene feels like it has something important in it. Every scene feels like there's no fat, there's nothing wasted. It creates tension and energy through the whole movie and ends in a wild turn with the character shifting from their initial beliefs. A 10 out of 10 movie, of course, one of Steven Spielberg's top and best movies. It's a must watch for anyone.
Well said. Yeah, it's hard because it's not like we're trying to like reveal a hidden movie to anybody or you know break it. Everybody knows this movie's excellent. It's just that good, and so it's like, we agree.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh man,
absolutely. So, do we have something for next week for the next challenge?
I think it's your turn to challenge me.
Forgot what we were supposed to challenge.
Gargoyles, because you did gargoyles to me, then this to you.
I forgot, and I don't got anything right now. What else is coming out?
Let's pull up the movies list. Let me see.
That's true, yeah. I was getting so confused when we were going back on which Indiana Jones movie we were going to watch. I forgot who challenged what.
So, Mission Impossible.
Ooh, that's right. I'm challenging you to Mission Impossible Fallout.
Oh man, that is a good one. I actually watched that in IMAX and I freaking love that movie. That is a good one. Okay. Yeah, we have a new Mission Impossible actually coming up as well. Dead Reckoning, I think it is. So that's perfect timing. That'll be really good. We'll get into that. And then we'll do a react for Dead Reckoning as well when that comes out. So that'll be good.
Absolutely.
Watch along with us, guys. Let us know what your favorite Mission Impossible is, and we'll mention it on the show. Tell us on both Twitter and Threads. I promise to have that set up by then.
Exactly. Yeah, and let us know what you think about Indiana Jones and which one is your favorite out of all of them.
For sure. All right, guys. Thank you very much for hanging out with us, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Aloha.